Good morning and welcome. Today we have representatives from Parker, Smith and Feek and IMA who are going to talk about active assailant. More and more of these incidents are happening lately, and we probably thought you'd like to learn a little bit about what you need to do to prepare before one of these incidents happens in your place of business. Today we will be answering questions via the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen, and we will do that after the presentation, so we will hold those to the end. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Logan. And good morning, Logan.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Logan Dozier, and I manage our My Hospitality Insurance Program here at the Washington Hospitality Association. My Hospitality Insurance is founded on the principle of bringing tangible ROIs to our industry that result in wins. That means saving every dollar we can while keeping or improving your insurance coverage. We do this by leveraging our buying power and by working with insurance carriers to tell your story. Our program covers all your insurance needs, from general liability, property, auto, liquor, cyber, and many, many more. If you have any questions or want to chat and visit, please visit www.myhospitalityinsurance.com. Now, I want to introduce you to one of our great program partners, Melissa. She is a seasoned professional that brings a wealth of experience to tailoring insurance plans that meet our industry needs and goals. Thank you, Melissa, for your dedication to our hospitality community. With that said, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thanks, Logan. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Holtzclaw. I am an account executive at Parker, Smith and Feek, and as Logan mentioned, I specialize in creating insurance programs specific to our hospitality clients, and I am in our national hospitality practice group. In addition to partnering with the Washington Hospitality Association, I do the same for similar associations in Texas and Florida. With me today is Brenda Rice at IMA, which is our parent company, and Brenda specializes in active assailant risk management. So thank you for being here, Brenda. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Good morning, and thank you, Melissa, and thank you, everyone, for inviting me to be a part of this. As Melissa mentioned, I am in our risk control division within Parker, Smith and Feek and IMA, and my focus is within the active shooter. So been doing this now for a little bit on to 15 years of diving in from when this initialized. I'm certified as an ALICE instructor within that program that is used a lot within K through 12, but has been moved into another area. I work with a lot of different hospitality groups, education groups, and healthcare groups. So it's always a very interesting topic. So.
Thanks, Brenda. As Lisa mentioned, this is a very sensitive conversation, but our goal today is just to provide information and resources so you can be as prepared as possible for an event like this. So why don't we jump right in, and Brenda, maybe you can go over briefly what an active assailant event is and why coverage is important. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. You'd think by now, after this much technology, we'd have that figured out, but sorry. Anyway, most of us know what an active assailant event is. It's just kind of, where does it fall within the guidelines of OSHA, workers' comp, what insurance will cover it, what time does it merge from, you know. And an active shooter isn't just a specific person, isn't usually always a rare individual, but it is somebody that a lot of times we see as more of a domestic situation. Within the hospitality environment, you could have more disgruntled guest situations that rise between the guests, or just depending on where you're located within your environment and the neighborhood and your Lyme life around you as to what your exposures may be. So with injuries that, you know, are reasonable and foreseeable, sometimes there comes into the concern of what will work comp cover and what will my liability cover and what do I have in place. So that's something that Melissa and I'll work with you on today. Melissa, I'll let you go ahead and cover the trends if you would like.
Yeah, so this is just a brief outline of what we've been seeing since 2017. As you can see, every year there is pretty much an increase. And already this year in 2023, we're looking at 331 different incidences throughout the US. It's easy to think that these sort of situations won't happen to you. So I found some scenarios throughout Washington just to kind of give you an idea of things that we've seen here. As you can see, there is a diverse geographic range throughout the entire state. And it ranges from establishments to their parking lots. One situation that I wanted to kind of just bring to light is the Munch Bar shooting that happened at Bellevue Square. As Brenda was talking about, sometimes just your geographical area next to another business can affect you. In this case, obviously, Munch Bar was at the mall. So when the shooting broke out there, other businesses also sustained some damages and had to close. Recently, I actually experienced just down the street from me the Allen Mall outlet shooting. And what a lot of people didn't see was what had to go into effect after the actual event. So the entire mall was closed for 2 weeks. Even people who were there at different locations within the outdoor space, their cars, everything had to stay there while the crime scene was processed. And so it comes into account of who's responsible, and ultimately, is it the tenant, the landlord? But a lot of times for us, we just want to make sure our clients have the proper coverage. And it's making sure that your employees and that your business income can kick in right away. So looking at these sort of incidents, we see that 45% of them happen within the commerce space, and the target risk being schools, universities, hotels, retail, places of worship, and other political events. And Brenda can go over some of the key coverage parts for you.
Sure. So from the key coverage parts, some of the things that we kind of think about is, and Melissa specifically hit it on the head there, is the active shooter incidents happen very quickly. It's all the other things after that 5 to 10 minute situation that we have to be prepared for and know whether or not our coverage is going to provide us with some of the resources and assistance that we need. So Melissa gave the example of business interruption. Business interruption will take the place of the FBI, Homeland Security coming in, doing their investigations. With all the cases that we reviewed, it's always interesting going through the training and learning as to, well, this individual actually did know somebody that was in that restaurant or that facility that evening, or they had been upset with the fact that a friend had gone there all the time and it was their favorite place, and now the friend's gone, and so they're just mad, and so they take their frustration out on somebody. The third party liability, defense costs, settlements, those around you, and just making sure that your employees are also taken care of. Will work comp cover it? Will it not? Does it fall under an act of terror, or does it fall under domestic violence? That's where that investigation is going to need to take place from that standpoint, as to who's actually going to cover that and provide the care for that. And then making sure from our employee retaining replacement assistance that throughout our HR policies, we have those things already in line and procedures to be able to provide the reunification and the process with being able to provide them the mental support and focus and financial support to be able to get back to work. If there's anything I missed, Melissa, you can let me know. So potential areas of concern, obviously there's property damage that could occur, right? We're going to have windows broken out, we're going to have damage within the facility, especially if we get into situations where people decide to, fight back, running, they're going to knock over equipment. Loss of equipment, loss of income, is usually one of the bigger ones, because like I said, until the building is all cleared, until the actual case has been decided, then not until then can you actually go in and assess and start cleaning up and working with your carrier to get the building back up to par. Lawsuits can come from this. People may sue you for not providing a safe environment. Goes back to having policies and procedures in place, training and focuses there. Reputational, I don't think I have to spend a whole lot of time on that. Our lovely social media is very harmful in the hospitality industry. That's just always amazing how quickly we find out things about our clients, sometimes through social media, through friends, than actually finding out it from the client who's handling the situation. So it's always very important to think about that, be able to have a media policy in place, as well as how you're going to handle it, how you're going to present, how you're going to handle the situation around your facility to keep the media at bay. Harm to general public, who's responsible for that, right? Did we do enough to help protect them? And then harm to our employees, making sure our employees are properly being taken care of, filing the work comp claims, working with the insurance company to find out where it's going to be covered. All right, Melissa, we can go to the next slide. All right, so filling in potential coverage gaps. This is kind of where your policies will come into place. So, not reading all of these word for word, it's more of looking at what's going to provide me the coverage to take care of those guests within our facility. Can we help provide that counseling support, that crisis management focus within the guests that were there at that time? Is that something that's available through our general liability policy, which may not respond because it may not be looked at as an act of terror if they can go back and find out it was like a domestic violence and things like that. So it's looking to see where that policy is going to cover those costs. Property damage and interruption, again, is the active assailant policies extend the coverage into that business interruption. Even if the incident is in, a neighboring property and you're losing business because people can't get to your business because it's been blocked off, because it's still within that realm of area of the investigation, and you might have to close for a while. So making sure that we're getting that taken care of, and that we're actually getting our facility brought back up, property coverage and things in place versus the traditional, which may not always cover all that without the extra policy.
And I would say the most important thing is just understanding what your policy does provide for and what it doesn't, because as you know, most policies are filled with endorsements and exclusions. And so it may seem, oh, I have this coverage, but again, these are just the coverage gaps that we see and that we've identified for some of our clients that are kind of within the policy that then exclude this sort of coverage. And so again, it really just comes down to being aware of what you have in place and where the exposures may be.
Yes. And under the work comp one, I think, the biggest thing is the very last bullet there, where the policy provides a clearly defined personal accident benefit, rather than, state specific salary contribution benefits, which do not fully, identify the victims. The hardest thing is going to be is figuring out what caused the situation. Was it a workplace hazard that would truly have the motivation of an employee to an employee attack that then posed the harm to the employees, or is it just an act of terror? So looking at that into that focus to decide which one's going to actually cover. You always usually want to file it with work comp, just to see, let them do the investigation, get the claim in, file it, and then go from there. But then again, like Melissa said, knowing what your policy says and whether or not you have that active shooter, active assailant policy to be able to provide that extra coverage. Events have to be certified by the Secretary of the Treasury, Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security. No events since 9/11 have truly been, classified as an act of terrorism. So it's usually that civil defense, workplace violence, mental health. I don't know if you have anything to add in that area, Melissa, from the coverage standpoint.
Just one thing I wanted to talk about is how insurance would play a role. So I wanted to go over a scenario from one of our clients actually in St. Louis. It was a restaurant that had a rooftop bar that was on the 20th floor, there was an argument that broke out. The assailant returned with a gun, opened fire, and unfortunately hitting two innocent bystanders, one being hit in the head and dying, and the other one hit in the hip and having long-term issues. So how did the policy respond? Well, immediately the crisis response was notified, and they immediately engaged with the insured to start talking about what the public relation response strategy is going to be. Again, as Brenda mentioned, social media monitoring to make sure they're on top of that. Trauma counseling offered to all employees happened. The crisis claims team also jumped in and contacted families to get confirmation of funeral costs as well as medical expenses. That restaurant was able to open the next day with little to no business income interruption. And even now to this is still ongoing. They are continuing to monitor incoming claims and make sure that the reputation for the client is intact. So that's kind of how a policy would respond in some of these events. Thankfully, this one wasn't, obviously there was a tragedy, so still severe, but in some ways better than some other outcomes. And then one of the other questions we get asked a lot is specifically, how expensive is this going to be? And that's a hard question to answer as it is so specific to your industry and location and so many factors. But here are some of the different factors that we see. Obviously, if there's an exchange of money, if you're working alone or in an isolated area, providing services, alcohol, we know that situations like that can get out of control easily. Open late, higher crime rates, and what we see is the heaviest rating goes into the type of industry. And unfortunately for hospitality, that is right up there with grocery stores and schools and universities.
All right, so in this area, a couple of things that you're going to see in regards to if you were to apply for a policy for an active assailant, there are things that they're going to ask to see how prepared you are and what you have in place. And so this is where I step in from my role within the risk management side and then work side by side with Melissa to kind of say, okay, what's our risk potential, where are we at, and how can we provide with some guidance on having the policy, the practice, and the training in place. So, do you have a media strategy? The biggest thing is how quickly and who has that ability to be the first one to be able to speak to the media or to be able to post something. Are you prepared and ready to send out a notice or have a recording on your phone saying that we're closed at this time due to the situation, please direct your calls? Or if you had a catering event coming up or a huge conference coming up within a hotel, how quickly can we respond to let them know that we may not be able to hold that event for them based off of the situation that's just occurred? A vulnerability assessment, Melissa already kind of covered this. It's based off of where you're located at. So in every state, the Homeland Security provides a consultant to every member, every business, free of charge. And so that's something that, we can help you connect with whoever is in there. Some states, there's more than one, just depending on how large the state is. They'll break them out by regions. But they're a great asset to have come in and help you do that vulnerability assessment at no cost. The Homeland Security doesn't charge for them. And so we pair up with them a lot of times to help you out in that sense, looking at the type of business. Have your employees been advised on what to do in the event of attack? This is coming back to be one of the biggest struggles when it comes to the workplace violence, with OSHA requiring you to provide a safe place along with your insurance covering. We are not asking you to run tactical drills. Absolutely nobody really runs tactical drills except for the police department and the military. I even have college campuses where they'll run drills, but they won't run them with the students and things like that. They'll work with just the police department to do that vulnerability, to have them in, to have them guide with management as to where would you block off sections, if we had to. So when you think about training people, it's more of training them on how to make their decisions and who they're responsible for, which is really nobody other than themselves. When it's truly an active shooter from that standpoint. But the biggest thing is if your employees are trained, your guests are going to follow your employees. Or if the employee says, hey, listen, let's come now with me, the guest will follow the employee because the employee knows the environment where they're at, versus just those of us that are guests within your business at that time. Crisis management plan, the protocols in place. Protocols are really the aftermath. And a lot of times I'm working right now with a lot of universities and a lot of hospitality industries that, you can train staff. It's still the run, hide, fight. They have to make their own choice. We can't make them do anything. There's nothing new when it comes to that. But have we ran a drill to know how quickly can we set up a crisis command post? How quickly can we make that immediate communication? How quickly can we do a reunification and mental support for our families? Who's got the contact list to contact those vendors, to contact those events, to be able to quickly send out communication. Working with the law enforcement, make them your friends. I know a lot of you already do that. You invite them in, they come in, but really work with them in the fire department to know, where are your entrances, what's secured, what can and can't they get into. Let them give you some tips in regards to security and cameras and focus. So engage with them as much as possible. Counseling or family liaison services in place. Where's your employee assistance program? When's it going to come kick in? How quickly can you do that? And where would you hold it? Where would you hold that? And where would you be able to focus on that? So looking at those ways to be able to have that as part of your preparedness plan. Risk advisory services, assessments kind of comes back into that role of doing those security assessments. It's as simple as you can find a lot of security assessment samples on your website and on websites, or we have simple ones, lighting outside, bushes people can hide in, doors that get prop left open, windows, just looking at, where are some of my higher risk? What's next to me as far as an industry? Benchmarking and reviews, there are a lot. Melissa shared some information with you already. There's different ways to look at what's a good security plan, what's not. Homeland Security has everything available on their website as well for you to kind of get an idea of how to start a program and have something in place. And then again, training. I think I kind of already covered that in pretty good detail. But it's that if I have to attack, how do I do it? And again, it's very simple in some days. We're teaching from K to 12 how to do it, just looking at that means of ability to be able to diffuse the conflict. There's a lot of programs out there as well now within the hospitality as far as de-escalation, and working to handle some of that without it becoming too much of a violent situation. You want to take this one, Melissa, or you want me to cover it up? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so essentially for us, again, we like to look at things with a holistic approach. So realistically, what it comes down to is making sure that you have the proper risk transfer set up, which would be making sure that where your legal liability is and making sure that you have the proper policies in place. Then the second part of it is risk identification. As she said, making sure that you have the management training and all the different things, the vulnerability assessments. And then again, lastly, just your response. What happens after an event? And do you have the proper 24/7 support and advocacy ready? And those are the types of services that we offer for our clients. As you know, this is what Brenda goes around and helps teaches people. But as she mentioned, there's a ton of resources online through different platforms as well. And we're here to be a resource in any way. So always feel free to reach out to us. And that's all that we have for today.
As Melissa says too, we do provide a lot of training for clients. We do meet with a lot of organizations to sit and go over their business continuity and their business interruption and creating a crisis plan that's a little bit different than just your regular emergency response plan for these types of situations.
All right. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to drop them into the Q&A One thing I'm curious about is what constitutes an active assailant versus just regular robbery gone bad? Is there a does this make a difference in your classification and your coverage?
Yes, so there is going to be, again, there's different triggers that will then trigger different lines of insurance. So if this was a robbery gone bad, then it would start off most likely, hopefully you have a crime policy. So again, it's going to go back to intent. Everything's going to be reviewed from how it started, what happened, and really the details, because the details play a huge role on where the responsibility lies.
All
That-
right.
Yeah, that's where that investigation will come into place to really kind of help out, you know. Were they intentionally there? Did they ask for something when they came in versus it's just the result of.
And then Melissa, I've got a quick question too. Do you see these coverages baked into the package policy, or do you see these as standalone coverages, or both?
So as these are becoming more and more common, we are seeing more and more exclusions on policies. So whether or not be a package, a general liability, workers' comp, they are going in and adding that. I know one of the other recent ones we've seen within hospitality is the abuse and molestation. So as things become more common, insurance companies add in more exclusions, which then put you in a position to have to look for monoline coverage. So that's why this coverage specific to this is becoming more common, because it will come into effect in these events, but it also provides coverage for all the different levels that somebody may encounter in these situations, unlike other policies that we outlined, that some of them may have a little bit of coverage here, but it might not cover the full situation and financially be able to help you out.
All right, well, we don't have any more questions. I would like to tell everyone that yes, we will have this up on our website later on today. If you are interested in the PowerPoint presentation, I am going to ask you to email Logan, and Logan's email address is logand, LOGAND, @wahospitality.org. And once again, thank you guys so much for doing this webinar, Melissa and Brenda. It's very nice to meet you and listen to the information you presented today. And Logan, thank you for setting this up. And once again, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
You know,